Now, I'd like to introduce the first speaker today. His name's Randy Bartlett. Randy's the Deputy Director for the Fairfax County Public Works and Environmental Services. Randy's responsible for stormwater management and wastewater management for Fairfax County, Virginia's most populous local jurisdiction. He has more than 30 years of public works and private engineering experience. His previous professional undertakings include serving as Public Works Director in Bedford, Virginia and Blacksburg, Virginia, as well as Director of Environmental Services in Arlington County, Virginia. Let's welcome Randy Bartlett.
Thank you. I'm going to try to avoid the microphone so y'all can hear me in the back. I have usually a pretty loud voice about things. We're going to do a little technology here. When I saw the audience, I figured it'd be easier if I start off with the conclusions and then work my way through the presentation. Okay. So when I'm done the presentation, you're going to see this slide. These are the conclusions I'm going to draw from the presentation I gave you so you can kind of feel or see where we're going to be heading. One of the conclusions, science and funding right now on stormwater are lagging behind the regulations. We have a lot of regulations, we have a lot of goals, we're still developing the science and the funding. I'm going to walk you through that. Stormwater revenues, what local governments have to raise, what developers are going to pay, are going to go up significantly. On the local revenue side, it's going to be much greater than 100% if we're going to do everything we want to do. And that's a big number, and that scares a lot of people. Stormwater, I believe, and this is one of the themes I go out when I talk, it's about cultural change. For years and years, not just in Fairfax, throughout the country, stormwater has been ignored. It's get rid of it as quick as you can, get it down the hill, get it out, do what you can to fill the swamp, get rid of that stormwater just as fast as you could. And we didn't spend a lot of money on stormwater infrastructure. We started taking care of our roads, we started taking care of our drinking water system, our sanitary sewer system, but we ignored that stormwater system and thought it was going to last forever. So we got to change the way we think. Stormwater is no longer free. But to do cultural change, we need clear tasks, and we need to be able to explain to people, what is it I have to do? And that's a question. I'll go through my presentation when I'm done, see if you have the answer. We have to understand the benefits we're going to get cultural change. And if you do this, this is what you gain by it. This is why you want to do it. Why is it important to me? See if I answer that question for you. Probably not. The financial plan. How are we going to do it? What's it going to cost? Where's the money going to come from? What's it going to take to sustain it? What will it cost me? No longer we talk about $9 billion, $10 billion, the debts that, those numbers don't mean anything to me. What does it cost me? Personal stake. If I'm going to get cultural change, everybody has their personal stake in it. What's in it for me? What do I gain by it? So we heard about the Chesapeake Bay, but it's my local stream I care about. It's my water running across my yard I care about. What's in it for me? To get the cultural change, we have to answer these questions, I believe. We have to have honest, open, intelligent discussion. We can't be presenting things just from one side or one perspective. And then what can I do to help? And that's what you're all here today to learn about. So with that, we'll get back into the presentation. And hopefully that'll frame what I do for you. Okay. Cool. So, I like to start with this picture. This is a tributary of the bay. It is a new dawn for stormwater, and we have to see where the day leads us. I think you're all here because you care, you want to do things yourselves. A lot of people, individual homeowners and stuff, want to do things themselves. And you want to get out and communicate with other people. As we go out and communicate with other people, we really want to have a much broader understanding. So as a local government, and we're a local community, these are the things that are facing us. We have to renew our MS4 permit. What is an MS4 permit? Municipal Separate Storm Sewer System. There's 4 S's. It's pretty simple. You'll find a lot of the terms in stormwater are actually very simple once you get to them. This governs what comes out of our pipes. We've been working with the state now and EPA for almost 5 years. Our permit expired in 2007, and we're trying to negotiate a new permit. The problem, the challenges we're having is the old permit was about doing good things. It was a feel-good permit in a way. It was do these practices, do these best management practices. And now we're trying to move into measurable goals. We're trying to what actually comes out of that pipe? Well, how do we measure what comes out of 7,000 pipes? And if you put language in there that everything that comes out of that pipe has to conform to the Clean Water Act, one Dixie cup washes out of that pipe and we're in violation. And the community gets fined and tax dollars have to pay for it. So this is a real big issue for us. The Bay TMDL, what's a TMDL? Total maximum daily load. That's based on doing wastewater treatment and everything where you know exactly what's going into the system, what's coming out of the system, you can measure it every day. Well, stormwater doesn't work that way. It only comes out of the pipe when it rains. When it rains a lot, more comes out. When it rains a little less, comes out. So the daily part doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but that's what we're trying to do. So we hear it as a diet for the Bay. So there's a goal, we have to have it done by 2025, but we're still trying to figure out what it is we have to do and how we measure it, and we'll be talking about that. Then there's now the Aquitaine Flow TMDL. So in Aquitaine Creek, which is 44 square mile watershed in Fairfax County, Fairfax City, a couple other communities, it's been determined that we have a benthic impairment. We have this benthic impairment, and the studies by EPA indicate that the benthic impairment is due to sediment. So therefore, to reduce the sediment, what they've determined is we need to reduce the flow. Well, the flow coming out of the pipes off impervious surfaces, and most of the county doesn't have the sediment in it. The sediment is actually from in-stream erosion. So I have this TMDL now that says I'm going to reduce the flow coming out of the pipe to stop the in-stream erosion, and because it governs what comes out of the pipe, if I do stream restoration, that doesn't get us towards this TMDL. When actually stream restoration is the best way to fix that stream. So there's some gaps in logic, and when we talk about Aquitaine Flow TMDL, we're trying to reduce sediment, but now we're talking about flow. And in the Chesapeake Bay TMDL, we're talking about reducing sediment. So I'm having a difficult time explaining this to people, as I'm probably having a difficult time explaining it to you, why we're doing different things and why stream restoration of eroding banks doesn't help us. Other things that are hitting local governments, the MS4 audits, they went out and they audited communities in Virginia. They audited 6 Phase 1 communities last year. A community that had a very good program, in fact 2 communities had very good programs, were fined over $150,000 each. And the reason for the fines is the paperwork. A lot of it is the paperwork. It's, you know, you didn't have documentation. It looks like some oil might have spilled there. You don't have documentation. You don't have this piece of paper. So now we're trying to do a lot of construction, and we're trying to do a lot of this, and it's also about record keeping. How do we prove we did it? That ties back up into this MS4 permit, that one of our concerns is you get this language that we don't quite understand, then all of a sudden we get fined because we misinterpreted it, and then you've got all these third-party lawsuits where a different part of the community comes out and sues and says, oh, you're not meeting the letter of the law, and there's been a lot of those lately, so now it all starts to move into the legal arena, and that concerns us a whole lot. There's new legislation at the state level. They adopted regulations on trading of nutrients to help the bay. So you can trade the nutrients, and the way it all plays out, that anybody that develops less than 5 acres in Fairfax, if there was a nutrient bank down in the northern neck, they could buy into that nutrient bank down northern neck. But that doesn't help us with our Aquitaine flow or any of our streams. So I end up where I have a state law that says you can trade the nutrients, but then I look at the people and say, yeah, but you can't release any water. You know, how do we connect all this? There's federal rulemaking, you know, adding into the whole piece. There's new state stormwater regulations. And all of this is what you hear about with stormwater right now. It's about the quality, it's about managing that initial quantity, it's about stream protection in the bay, but stormwater is also about flooding. You don't hear much about that because the EPA regulator doesn't deal with flooding, so they're not into that piece. And then we've got dam regulations that are tightening up. So a lot of these dry ponds that you see, a lot of these wetlands that we create, actually have state-regulated dams, and we have to be paying attention to the dam regulations. Not the dam regulations. Got all that? Okay. So there's all this stuff coming in local government. A lot of it, when I say local government, that means it's coming to the local community, and it's local community has to pay for it to make sure we do it. Sorry about my heading. I talked about the MS4 permit. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this slide for y'all. This is what's in that document. We have to track on public education, all the groups we speak to, who attends, what the goals were, and then we're supposed to go out and determine what people learn and report that every year. We have to train all county employees. We have to have documentation that they were trained. We have to have documentation on what they were trained on, when they were trained, what the training program was. The TMDL action plans is something that shifted. The state used to do the TMDL action plans. The state's saying, hey, this stormwater stuff's costing a lot of money. We're having difficult financial times. We can't do this. Hey, let's put it in the permit. So now we have to do the TMDL action plans. And a whole lot of this is how we manage, how we do things, but then how we document. Okay. We've been raising issues about the gaps in logic as we're working through our MS4 permit. And a lot of people look at us and say, hey, do you really care about the environment? Why are you pushing back? Well, I do care a lot about the environment. The picture on the cover, that's where I water ski, that's where my kids and nieces water ski, so we care a whole lot. We're out there swimming, we care a whole lot what's going on. But these are some of the gaps. Why is the Bay TMDL a separate section in our permit? So I go out and I listen to the presentations, and I hear the presentation is the Bay TMDL should not be about accounting and numbers. It should not be worried about how many pounds you have to do. It's about managing properly and how you manage properly. But I've got 3 pages in my permit, my draft permit, that talk about how I account for it, how I measure it, and how I keep track of everything. So there's a gap in the logic of, hey, do the right thing. That's what we really want you to do, but it's really more about how we account for it. Then why is there a credit limit for improvements in the MS4 service area? Our permit says we only get credit for what occurs in our MS4 service area. I'm going to show you a slide and talk about that a little later. There's 3 specific bay segments. In Fairfax County, the way the Bay TMDL is drafted, we have 3 different segments of the Potomac and 3 different TMDLs we drain into. They all have different loadings and different efficiencies, so you end up with 3 different standards, and I'll show you a picture of this and how this plays out. Why don't the state and EPA efficiencies match? So I got a set of state regulations being adopted that measure what we do, and you do the calculations. Well, EPA has different numbers for that formula. So now I've got to do each set of calculations twice. And I'm going to show you some slides as we run through some of our projects, how we account for it. We went back and compared if we accounted for it with the state system or the EPA system, do they line up? Not only did they not line up, one number was off by a factor of 9. And it has to do with modeling, it has to do with how you do things. And there's reasons for it, but it's very difficult when all of a sudden it's in a permit that's a legal document. There's a new state law on trade conflict with the permit. So I got a state law that says anybody can trade, I can't stop them from trading, yet I have to meet these water quality standards. My concern is down the road, people today are going to do things and trade. We know that 70% of our streams are impaired. We're a very developed community. We know eventually we're going to have more flow TMDLs if that's the technique we use. If we trade it away now, 5 years from now, the residents are going to have to be the ones that pick up the total bill, and it's going to be harder to retrofit than to build it right from the very beginning. So we're concerned with that. Stream restoration. Stream restoration, I'm going to show you some pictures of stream restoration. It's one of our best tools. It's one of our most popular tools. We think it's getting our most benefit. There's not a lot of credit for it in there. And streams are downstream of our discharge, so therefore they're not part of our MS4 permit or MS4 service area, so we don't get any credit for them in our MS4 permit as it's all drafted. And then the last question I always share this with our board is, how can we understand, and there's so many unknowns, how can I go out and explain it to a community and say, this is what we need to do. Remember my cultural change? This is what we need to do, why we need to do it, this is what we're going to get. When there's so many questions and I can't even answer them myself. Okay. No. Went backward. Okay. This is Virginia, the drains to the Chesapeake Bay. I'm going to tell you about the 3 different segments. Here's Fairfax County, right up in here. You can see part of Fairfax County. There's a TMDL for the Potomac here, a TMDL for the Potomac here, a TMDL for the Potomac here. So part of Fairfax County is in with the whole Shenandoah Valley. So that means our loadings are the same as the Shenandoah Valley and how we do that. Part of it's in with Prince William County. That kind of makes sense. And then part of it's in with Arlington and the district. Why is it always okay? So this blows it up a little bit. Here's Fairfax County again. Here's the part with the Shenandoah. So when we do our accounting for our draft, as our draft permit's written, so that's why I said it's still a draft, this is still the discussion. We have all different loadings, all different calculations for this area than we do for this area, than we do for this area. And therefore, if you're a resident, you come in and you say, hey, I want to add a driveway, I have to know if you're here, here, or here to determine how I figured out. And then this is the Aquitink watershed coming down through here. And if you're an Aquitink, I have a whole different set of calculations, a whole different set of criteria. It gets very confusing. We're trying to figure out how can we get something fairly standard so I can explain to people back to cultural change. This is what you do so that you can understand it. So that's the issue with the 3 different segments. The state's trying to work with EPA on this. This is the MS4 question. Again, this is all of Fairfax County. The green is our MS4 area. So we have about 7,000 outfalls. We have about 7,000 little MS4 areas that we have to do. The yellow is other communities, Alexandria, Fairfax, Town of Vienna, Falls Church. The gold is the federal properties. There's some federal properties in purple. Here's George Mason. They have their own MS4 permit. All these systems flow together. They're in and out. And how we track that, we're not sure. Also, I get credit, or the community gets credit, if we do a project in the green area. But if we do a project in the blue area, it's outside our MS4 and we don't get it. So all of a sudden that starts to say that the revenue that we're collecting, or the tax dollars we're collecting, is going to be focused, and may not be focused on areas where people really want it or are ready for it. It may not be focused on areas where it's not most cost effective. So that's the issue we're raising with why is it limited to our MS4 area? That, and let us do streams. Okay. So I'm going to run you through some projects. So I raised all the issues. So I want to show you projects that we are doing in Fairfax County that we're really proud of. We're doing a lot of stream restoration. I focused on that. Here's the before shot. You've seen this a lot of places in Fairfax County. The stream is starting to cut down. The energy of the water is causing the bank to erode. And what we try to do is we try to bring the base of the stream up. So we're not trying to make the channel bigger, but we're trying to bring the base of the stream up. We're trying to reintroduce the floodplain, and then we're trying to use native vegetation. This is not as simple as just fill it in and go plant plants. There's a lot of step pools coming through here. There's riffles where we actually design it so that the water will come in, put the energy back into the pools. We'll keep the pools, so it's designed to mimic a native stream, but then the vegetation grows over and hides a whole lot of that stuff so that you don't see necessarily all the hard construction. So that's one of the streams. You will see that we're tracking down here the nutrients and stuff. You don't have to pay attention. I'm going to give you a slide at the end that's going to summarize all of that. So that's one of the stream restorations, and that's about a year and a half, I believe, after we did the work. Pretty impressive. It should be about the exact same location. Slides. Here's another stream restoration, a little sooner after construction. Again, you can see how it was cutting, how we've gone back in, we've restored the floodplain. One of the challenges as we do all of this, remember flooding, one of those things that we're not paying close attention to. Well, when I bring this stream up, I do actually reduce some of the capacity that I have. As I reintroduce the floodplain, I get the water back further over here. So where people have built up to the stream, I start to have a problem. I can also create some headwater back further up the stream if I'm not careful. So there's a real balance between making these environmental improvements and not causing other problems with flooding. Okay. Okay. Here's the last stream restoration. This is dead run, and we use a different technique here. You can see the stream was coming around the corner, continuing to erode. There's a drainage pipe that came out. You can see how far it eroded on that pipe. It was working its way back to a gazebo at one of our parks. And what we did is we used a process where we just stepped it up. We used the fabric and soils. We used native planting. So now as the water comes around the low flow, it stays in the channel. And as it comes around the higher flow, it works its way up, starts taking the energy out and brings it around. You can see the gazebo, and then you say, well, that doesn't look very pretty. But hey, there it is a little bit later. There's your gazebo. There's the tree, and there's the exact same tree, and here's your stream. So you can see how it comes in. So we get a lot of benefit out of this. So not only have we slowed the water down, we're collecting the sediments, we've stopped the continuation of sediments, and we've established a habitat. Okay, outfalls. This is one of the projects, and these are some of my favorite types of projects. A lot of times you've seen where a pipe comes out near a stream. At the end of that pipe, the water goes down and erodes, and all of a sudden the pipe's hanging out there in space, and you got this big gully right at the end of your pipe. That's the outfall of the pipe. That was the situation we had here. Here's the pipe, boom. You can see it continues to erode and continues to cut down. What we've started doing is using some natural stream restoration techniques, some stuff we learned from the city of Annapolis. Here's the exact same outfall. What we do is we go in and put a series of step pools. There's a sand bed under there. Low flows will filter through the sand, remove the nutrients. And then high flows, it takes the energy out as it works its way through the step pool. And there's actually rocks designed to fit that. Here's the picture after construction was built. Here's the picture after it's had time to establish itself. The pipe is right here. We built a micro pool down at the bottom to capture low flows a little bit to allow further sedimentation. Here's the micro pool. In this picture, same micro pool. And this is actually designed to be a wetland, so when the flow in the stream right down here gets up, it'll backfill in and support the wetland. So that's the type of outfall projects we're doing. Here's another outfall project. Pipe is right here. You can see discharges. You see a lot of times it just cuts away at the bank right immediately downstream. Here's the step pool. One of the step pools, so as it comes in, it forces the energy down, takes the energy out. We went back in, restored the floodplain, and you can see how that one works. And there's a picture, same picture, and this is about a year later. Cattails came in on their own. We plant some things and other things just show up. And you can see it's starting to stabilize and hopefully it'll last. This is the last outfall I'm going to show you. This is the first one we did, and unfortunately, we weren't taking pictures real well at that time, so I don't have a real true before picture. But this was just a big grass field that was in the floodplain. People were using the floodplain for playing. There was like a 36 or 48-inch storm drainage pipe up here that was serving an apartment complex. They were concerned that this was dangerous. It was about a 6-foot drop on either side. Pipe came out, boom, washed all the dirt out. About a 6-foot drop continuing to erode. We said, okay, we'll work with you if you let us do natural stream restoration and you let us put a buffer in. And they said, okay. So this is right after construction. This is what the step pools will look like. It's designed so that the water gets deeper and has to go up on the sides and it falls back in on itself into the pools. Pay attention to this tree right here. People look at this and say, oh my gosh, it's just riprap, you're not paying attention to what you're doing. There it is a little later, there's your tree. There's your step pools. And here it is about 2 years later. There's your tree, and you don't even see your step pools anymore. So we think Then we're doing detention ponds. So in the 70s, we started building detention ponds to control floods. We use trickle ditches. The water washes through real quick. You get the first flush through, so all the nutrients, pollutants go through real quick, but then you would capture it to help with the flood. What we're doing with those is we're going back, we're retrofitting those, we're putting micro pools in, we're extending the flow, so this ditch that comes down the side and boom and in, comes down, has to come all the way up and around and flows through a series of pools. Cultural change, we're still trying to put our native vegetation in, let the vegetation take up the nutrients. Homeowners associations, contractors still mowing it like it's grass. We're back and forth, but we're getting there with them. And our own crews do it sometimes too. It is changing. Okay, this is one of those things that it was an outfall, it had a concrete ditch coming straight down the same pond. Here's where we put the step pools in. You can actually see how the step pools were working on a fairly heavy flow. Here's that same system about a year later after the vegetation's come back in and they quit cutting the grass. One last detention basin. This is a regional pond. Again, it was a large regional pond. You pay attention to this house over here. Trickle ditch came through, flows got up, sediment got out, killed all the grass. We had a lot of problems with mosquitoes and stuff because in this trickle ditch you would just clog up and everything. We came in, we put the micro pools in, we put the native vegetation, we put a floor base so we can collect the sediments up front and clean it out easier. And then once we get this type of forebay in there in this permanent pool, we get the frogs and the dragonflies and all the other good stuff, and that stabilizes it. Except that good stuff sometimes includes snakes and things, and we're still running into those issues. People don't like the habitat all the time. We're doing LID. We talked about porous pavement. Here's porous pavement being instructed in the library. We did a series of projects at the library for a demonstration. We did some islands. So we knocked the curb down in the island. We put the native flowers in. This is a different island, it's one over, but it's the same thing. Looks nice in this picture. People get concerned. They like the grass. They like it nice, neat mowed. They don't always like the wildflowers. And you don't always have your flowers in bloom all year long. But we're trying to get people used to it. But that filters the water before it gets into the system. This is a filtera. This is a structural. This is a priority thing that the company manufactures. Basically a catch basin full of soil. Water flows into here, filters it out, does a little bit of retention, and then the trees take the nutrients out. Rain garden, you heard about a rain garden. I think most people are familiar with those. We did some of these at ball fields. There it is, where it's built. And there it is after the vegetation's been established. Some of the problems we have is you get the stuff you plant, and then you get all the weeds and the stuff the animals bring and everything else, and people don't like it, and you have to weed it, and there's a lot of maintenance that goes with it. This is a bioretention swale. You can see the hard ground, traditional water runs off the parking lot and roads. Not much filters into the ground through the bioretention swale. And this is interesting because we monitor this one. And we monitor nutrients. I just have the slide for the rainfall, but we track the rainfall that actually fell, what actually ran off, that we measured at the bottom of the system, and what we calculated for good forest. We actually beat good forest on occasion. And after a year's worth of information, 82% of the rainfall is captured. Things work. Another one, this is the Providence District Supervisor. You can just see the drainage area. We put in a porous pavement, fire retention swale. We had good soils on this site where they actually filtered into the ground. There's the construction of it. The flow reduced 84%. That was the last slide. It's very similar to the previous one. We also track nutrients like we did at the other one. We only do this at 3 sites because it's so expensive. So you can see the concentrations are down, but more important, the total nutrients coming off are way down because so much water is coming off. We're doing monitoring around the county on streams. We started working with USGS so we get some baseline. Like I said, the science wasn't there. What's actually in the streams? What do we have? Okay, and this is the project benefits. So each project we track, the phosphorus, the nutrient, the nitrogen, total suspended solids, we put cost to it. Notice it costs $45,000 a pound for phosphorus, $10,000 a pound on the detention ponds. Wastewater and agriculture is about $50 a pound. urban stormwater is about the most expensive thing to do all of this. This is important to understand, and this was not done by the county, it was done by an independent company that was just looking statewide what things would cost. The estimated cost of implementing the Bay TMDL, and there's a lot of assumptions to go into it, for Fairfax County would be $70 million a year. We're doing about $5 to $6 million a year now. Big increase. What does it mean to me? Residential household, $160 just to build a facility per year. Right now, the residential household pays about $75. It's a 200% increase. I say a 200% increase to my residents, they go, oh my gosh, no, we can't afford that. Well, I present that cultural change, $160 a year, and then you add in another $75, you get to about $20 a month. What do you currently pay for your cable, your cell phone, your internet service? So is it a big deal? How much you pay to go, pick up a cup of coffee on the way to work in the morning over a month period? It's a big percentage. Is it a big dollar value? That's part of the cultural change we have to work through. We are doing things that don't cost anything. A lot of volunteers, like people in this room, help with cleanups. Cleanups, here's a stream that's outside of the county, before and after. And that has very significant improvements. Oh. So there's the conclusions that I started with. The science and funding are lagging behind the regulations. I gave you those construction costs. I have no idea what it costs to maintain those facilities yet. I have no idea what it's going to, how long they're going to last. We're still trying to figure all that out. And we're going to need to know that. Stormwater revenues must rise greater than 100%. We're looking at 200% just for construction. Then we got maintenance on top of that, MS4 requirements on top of that. It's a big percentage. Is it a big number? The community has to decide. What do I have to do? I gave you some of the ideas. I don't have all the answers. Why is it important to me? It's important. Different parts are important to different people. Some people it's the bay, some people it's streams, some people it's flooding. What will it cost me? We're trying to break that down so we can tell people. We're trying to get it to an open, honest discussion. We want people to understand, yes, I want to save the bay, I want to save our streams, and yes, I'm willing to pay for it, and I'm willing to do it. Then the last question is, what can I do to help? The whole rest of the day is devoted to that, I believe.